When you are considering investing in a company, its CEO is an important part of your decision. A good CEO guides a company through vision and leadership. A bad CEO can ruin a company with his or her greed and negligence. Many CEOs can hurt the bottom line simply by costing the company more than they're worth. CEOs earn as much as some professional athletes and movie stars. With the mystique surrounding the superstar CEOs, it's easy to forget that their jobs are to serve the companies and their shareholders, not to pad their own wallets. High CEO salaries lead to higher management costs, and higher costs eat away at profits. For some CEOs, it's all about the money. They're nicknamed the Fat Cats. These CEOs are so focused on receiving production bonuses that they will push a company to produce beyond sustainable levels. They take the money and run, leaving for the next company before the damage is understood.
When the entire financial system was on the brink of collapse, the government pumped in massive amounts of money to rescue banks. The 20 largest bailed out banks received $283 billion in taxpayer money. And today we learned the executives running those 20 troubled banks still received enormous paychecks. Here's Betsy Stark.
Why the HFM, please?
The worst financial crisis since the Great Depression took place on their watch. But 2008 was still a very rich year for the 20 bank CEOs whose firms received billions in taxpayer bailouts. Each took home an average of $13.8 million, while the average wage earner who paid for the bailout brought home less than $32,000. In other words, the average bank CEO earned 436 times the salary of the average wage earner and 34 times the salary of the president, all while presiding over an historic debacle.
Many Americans across the country are still suffering from this crisis, and yet the executives who led us into this mess stand to reap huge windfalls.
Today's report blasts the financial industry's top executives not only for their excessive pay, but also for profiting at their employees' expense. The authors calculate that the $3.2 billion the executives cumulatively earned over the last 3 years would be enough to bankroll 66 weeks of unemployment insurance for the 160,000 workers they collectively laid off since the beginning of last year.
No matter what happens, the executives always seem to come out ahead.
Industry advocates say the report is a jumble of twisted statistics and that the $13.8 million the bank CEOs averaged in 2008 represents a pay cut.
Their pay was reduced because their earnings were reduced, but they put these companies back on their feet during 2008. And thank goodness to the American people that they did that.
With the stock market up and banks on the mend,
Good morning.
the CEOs are on course for an even bigger thank you this year.
The CEO, I get it, is going to make more than the average worker, of course. In fact, I agree with that, right? Because the decision that the CEO makes at the top of the company is going to affect whether that company survives or not more than the guy working in the factory. Now, some of you might disagree with that, and some of you might say, hey, that's not fair, and everybody's work should be valued the same. I say, I don't agree with that. I'm a capitalist, okay? So if you want to have a bone to pick with me on that, okay. I hear you. And back in 1980, well, they got significantly more than the average worker. They got 42 times the average worker. Now, I don't know if that's the right amount, but you know, that's pretty significant. That's a lot more than the average worker, and I think it should be more. So 42 times, that's pretty significant. You can see it there, right? Well, last year, it had skyrocketed, actually in 2010, I should say, to 343 times the average worker's pay. Okay, there comes a point where you go, hey, wait a minute now. Does that make sense for the company? Because think about it from this perspective. This is very important. I want you to understand this. These aren't entrepreneurs we're talking about. So if you're Bill Gates and you made 3 billion times more than your average worker, but you started the company, I get it, and we reward entrepreneurs in this system, and I think we should, because we want them to build big companies like Microsoft that hire a lot of people, right? Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, whoever you might be, they make so much more, I get it. We're not talking about that. This is Fortune 500 companies. These are guys who are bureaucrats, who run the company. They didn't start the company, they're managers. Now, again, the decisions they make are critical to the company. That's why I think they should be paid more, right? But do they have to be paid 343 times more than the average worker? So you might think, all right, well, that was 2010. It's probably improved in 2011, right? None of you think that, right? Of course, it's gotten worse. It is now average CEO makes 380 times the average worker's pay, and they are now up to $12 million on average for Fortune 500 CEOs. Turn around and go, oh, what could we do? We just didn't have any money to give to the workers. Well, how about your paycheck? How about you distribute that